Today on Soul Work for Moms. Before having children, did you ever feel that you just weren't the mothering type? That's what our next guest says she felt like. She says she's a blunt, tell-it-like-it-is person whose husband once even described her personality as being similar to sandpaper. Sarah McGinnis, a once reluctant, now completely bought-in stay-at-home mom, has two beautiful children, Allie, age 4, and Elijah, who's 18 months. She has a couple part-time gigs to support her stay-at-home mom habit, her favorite of which is leading worship for an amazing church. She loves cooking, music, reading, and says she has a weak spot for WB and CW teen dramas. Hear her journey of mothering right after this. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson, and last year I created a workshop for moms to get together and work through some of the things they were struggling with. The feedback from the workshop was great, but the thing I heard over and over again from the mothers was that they loved hearing all the other women who shared their struggles and strengths in mothering. I wanted to create an outlet for more of that, and the result is this podcast. Join me as I interview a different mother every week. You can listen in as women from all different backgrounds and stages in life share their experiences in motherhood. You'll also hear from expert guests who share their ideas on how to take the hard parts of mothering and use them to grow personally and spiritually. I call it Soul Work for Moms, Evolution Through Mothering. Welcome to the show. Sarah, thank you so much for being on Soul Work for Moms.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start out by asking you to tell us a little bit about just who you are, where you live, what you do, and a little about your family.
Well, so I'm 30 years old, just turned big 3-0 back in November. And so I'm married. My husband's name is Brandon. We've been married for 6 years, and we have 2 kids together. Allie, who is 4 years old, and Elijah, who is just right around 16 months. And then our little forgotten child, Baker, who's our dog. She was our first one. And we live in Louisville, Kentucky. We just moved here about 3.5 years ago. My husband is a Methodist minister. He's a deacon in the Methodist church. And so he had gotten a job at a church here in Louisville. And so we packed up from a little apartment in Wilmore, Kentucky, and moved to Louisville. And so at that point, I decided to transition into being a stay-at-home mom. I thought that was a good route to go. I didn't want to wrestle with trying to find a child care facility that I trusted in a city as big as Louisville, and really wasn't sure what I wanted to do career-wise in Louisville either. So I decided to become a stay-at-home mom. And when people ask me what I do, that's usually the first thing I say. But I also have 3 part-time jobs that I do to quote unquote support my habit of being a stay-at-home mom, because it's kind of expensive being a stay-at-home mom because you lose a lot of income. So I've finagled a few different part-time jobs that I do at kind of at home after the kids are in bed, or other hours when my husband doesn't have to work, so that I can be home with them the majority of the time.
And what kind of things are you doing?
So my favorite of the ones I do is I'm a worship leader for a church, and I'm also their communications director. So I handle a lot of any like advertising and marketing stuff, but also coordinate their social media presence and update the website and things like that. So that's about 20 hours of my week, and that's the one I get to do kind of on my own time. Around the crevices of my day that aren't filled with diapers and other things. And then I also work at a preschool Mother's Day Out program that my kids attend. So I do that. So I'm not with them. I'm with other kids, which is kind of funny. Not really getting a break from kid life during that time. And then I work for a catering company off and on doing weddings and events like that. So those are my 3 kind of random odd jobs I do.
What was life for you like growing up as a child?
I had a good family. I have an older brother who actually he lives up in the northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, and we had 2 really great parents they're still together. They've been together for like 35 years now. Very stable home. My mom is a Methodist pastor. So we've moved around a little bit. And that was, I think at the time I thought it was horrible and painful. And now looking back, it was a great experience. My dad is, he's retired now, is a licensed clinical social worker. So we grew up in a home where you talked about your feelings a lot, which was not always pleasant when you're a teenager that just wants to sit in your room and not talk to your parents. But it was good. You know, they were good, loving parents, and they still are, and they're great, loving grandparents now to both my kids and my brother's kids.
Awesome. What about your journey to becoming a mother? Did you always know that you wanted to have children? Tell us a little bit about that.
Growing up, especially as a teenager and early in college, I told myself that I was not the mothering type. If you ask any of my friends, I'm the blunt, straightforward, kind of sharp edge friend that you have that doesn't always seem like the nurturing type. Like, you don't come to me for sympathy. You come to me for a dose of reality. And so I think I would tell myself that that's not the type of person I was. I think that's maybe what I did want, but I didn't feel like that's who people thought I was. And so that maybe that wasn't the best path for me. But when you get married, having kids is just one of those things that just starts to creep into your mind. And it crept in a lot earlier than I thought it would. My husband and I had only been married a little over a year before we started trying for our first. And, I had several friends that it took them like months and months and months to get pregnant. I was like, well, we'll start trying now because, like 6-7 months when we probably get pregnant, I'll be ready. And it was like first try was knocked up. I was like, oh, okay. Wow. So we know that we're both fertile. So that's good. And then we were just kind of thrown into that pretty early on in our marriage. And I look back on that and go, maybe we should have waited. But and I think if we had waited, like, I wouldn't have the daughter that I have now. I'd have probably some different daughter or some different son. And you can't look at your kid and go, that's the kid I was supposed to have. That's kind of, I never thought I would be a mom, let alone a stay-at-home mom, because career and drive has always been something that's very big with me. And I remember my mom saying it to me at one point that when I had started dating my now husband, she was like, I really thought that you would just never get married and you would just kind of live with the guy and never have kids. It's like, oh, okay. And I mean, I can understand where she thought that, but that's not what happened. And it was unexpected for me too. And I'm really glad to be where I am.
What about that transition then? If you weren't really sure that you were the mothering type and career has always been really important to you, and then you find yourself being a stay-at-home mom, was that a seamless transition or was there struggle there?
No, that was a painful transition. I was doing, when I first had Allie, I was working full time still, and she was in daycare, and that was way more upsetting than I thought it would be. I remember the first day we dropped her off. I didn't go to work that day because I knew I needed to be able to go back and get her if I wanted to. And I remember we dropped her off and I went out the car with my husband and I just started losing it. And we only made it to about noon before I was like, okay, we need to go back and get her now. So I had this like conflict, this entire like first 9 months of her life of like, I hated that. Because, when they're that young, they just sleep all the time. And so I'd pick her up from daycare and I'd get to maybe play with her for about an hour or so before she was ready to go to bed. And so I didn't feel like I was going to spend enough time with her. And then I never wanted to have babysitters or even put her in the nursery at church. Cause I was like, I have her in someone else's care, 40 plus hours out of the week. Like she doesn't need to be with someone else on the weekends too. And so when we found out we were going to be moving to Louisville, I was like, maybe I just need to stay home. Like maybe this would be healthier for me emotionally to just be at home with her. And I think stay-at-home mom is one of those things I think it's idealized in a lot of women's minds before they actually do it, right? And you hear that from tons of moms. It's like, it sounds glamorous. You're going to like bake with them all the time and do crafts. And then you realize all the things that you think will fill your day, fill 30 minutes. And then you're just staring at this kid like, can I have some alone time now? And so that first year, that I stayed at home was hard. It was really hard for my husband because I got very jealous of how fulfilled he was in his job and how unfulfilled I was feeling as a mom, as that being like my primary thing. And that took a long time to kind of rework mentally for me, kind of the idea of career and purpose that I'd always had for my life, and had not necessarily involved kids, and to kind of restructure that paradigm in my mind to be that, first of all, that this is a phase of life. I'm choosing to stay at home now. That doesn't mean that this is all I will ever do, and that's okay for right now. Because when I thought about going back to work, that thought was even more painful than dealing with kind of the difficulties of staying at home and that being your primary purpose. So that was hard for me, and it's gotten so much better now that like I've taken on some of these little part-time jobs, and especially the one I do with my church. Like that's something that what I do for them is something that's always been a passion of mine. And so even though I'm only getting to do it 20 hours a week, and I'm having to kind of fit it in the cracks and crevices of life, I'm still getting that little extra fulfillment of something that's Sarah outside of Sarah, the mom. And it's gotten much better. But that first year was a lot of tears and a lot of pain. But again, I'm glad that I stayed the course, and I'm glad that I've adjusted with it. And now I can't imagine not being with my kids as much as I am.
So I'm curious to hear about that paradigm shift. Describe that purpose that you feel now, that feeling of being fulfilled at home now.
Yeah. A lot of that for me was a pride issue, and how I thought other people were looking at me. It was really hard when I first transitioned out of working full time, that when people asked what I did, I would say, well, I stayed home with the kids. And that to me just sounded so, had no pizzazz to it, right? There was nothing exciting about that. There were no, neat stories of like my career and where I'd come from and what do I do and the people I work with. It was I'm a mom, and everyone kind of gets what that is. I change diapers and I cook meals and I, try to keep the house somewhat tidy, and we go to Target a lot. Everyone kind of knows what that looks like. And so it's not much of a conversation. It's not much of I don't feel like it was nothing fun to necessarily talk about with someone. It kind of was just a conversation stopper. And that's hard for me because I had a really neat job before I stopped working, where I was a team building facilitator and played games and, did rock balls and zip lines and things like that. And that was always fun to talk. People always impressed with that. Yeah. So it was really a pride issue for me of being able to let go of that and go, well, you didn't decide to be a stay-at-home mom for you. You're doing this for your kids. And so the pride I was feeling, the hurt pride that I was feeling about not being able to talk about my cool career, that was a me issue that I needed to come to grips with, and realize that the decision I made wasn't about me ultimately. It was about my kids and what I felt was best for them. And parenthood is nothing if it's not sacrifice. And so that's where that shift had to happen. I have to constantly remind myself, like, this is a phase of life. Your kids are only this small for this short amount of time. You only have this really radical sphere of influence in their life for such a small time, that the things I'm sacrificing in terms of what I feel like I could be, contributing to the world or whatnot, is worth it to be contributing to these kids' lives and what they're going to become and what they're going to contribute into the world. So I still have to remind myself of it. There's still times when I want to do more with the work that I do and the things that I'm passionate about. And there'll be time for that. There'll be time for that. My mom went back to school when I started kindergarten, and started a whole new career, and so I think I'm old sometimes when I hear like 30 and like I don't really know exactly what I want to do in the grand scheme of life. But 30 is not old. It's so young. And so that's just, it's a constant reminder to myself that this is just a phase and this is what you're willing to do right now and what you want to do right now. And there is life after stay-at-home mom world.
You had also mentioned when you started taking on those jobs to support your habit of being a stay-at-home mom, did that also help you to feel like you were also contributing outside of the four walls of your home?
Yes, absolutely. And that emotionally for me, that was a great step forward in being able to stay healthy mentally and emotionally at home, as I needed an outlet. And I think I found some good outlets that still allow me to be with my kids the majority of the time, but they're outlets I definitely need. And my husband and I have gotten better about being able to just tell each other when we need to go off and just be ourself somewhere. And I mean, obviously we want to spend time together, but we both realize that time together and time to just go and do your thing and be who you are is important to our relationship and to our family's dynamic.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, you have these few jobs that you have, and you have two little ones. I would love to hear just a day in the life. What's a typical day look like for you?
Schedule rundown. Well, it gets kind of flexible. So the neat thing about my husband's job, or anybody that really works in ministry in a church, is they can have pretty flexible hours in terms of when they are and are not at their office. So that helps us a lot. But typically, I'll give you an example. So like most days, my kids, they go to, my daughter's in preschool, and my son goes to a Mother's Day Out program, the one that I work at. And so we do that from like 9 to 1 on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I get them and we go home and we hang out until my husband gets home around 4:30, and we do family time and dinner and hang out and get the kids ready for bed. Our kids are great, and they go to bed by 7 every night.
Wow.
I know, right? I don't know how much longer that will last, but it's really nice that that's the way it works right now. And so once 7 o'clock hits, that's usually then when I start doing my work. Thankfully, when you do like communication stuff for a church or any business, a lot of that is on a computer, and I could just get out my laptop and I usually work for about a couple of hours, and then I try to be good about shutting the computer down around 9:30, and then for the next hour or so, that's when my husband and I usually get to kind of hang out and we'll watch a show or talk or we'll read or something like that. That's a pretty low key day. There are days in our week that are much more complicated because he works for a church. And so we go to a lot of church functions like Wednesday night meals and Bible studies and things like that. But typically, I mean, that's how it is. Or like if I I have office hours. So I'm at my office right now. And so Brandon and I kind of switch off. When he doesn't have to work, he watches the kids and I go in and work for a little bit, which is not always ideal, but that's one of those things we've talked about and just said, it's for right now, and we'll do it until it's not working. And once it's not working, we will figure something else out. But luckily Saturdays are a day that's family day. We're all together and we kind of just do whatever we want on Saturdays. But most of the week it's he and I switching off, who has the kids. And that's just kind of how we play it.
What about sleep right now? Are you sleeping through the night?
Well, I guess it depends on what you say through the night is. So typically our kids are pretty good sleepers. Our son has decided to torture us for the past couple weeks, and he started waking up around 5 a.m. and he'll come to bed with us, and sometimes he'll go back to sleep. That number slowly has been creeping up till last night. He woke up at 3:50 to come to bed with us, and so we might have to lay down the law a little bit tonight. But sleep is all right though. We'll take this last week out of the equation, and typically we have gotten to a pretty good place with sleep. We're lights out by between 10 and 11, and we're up between 6 and 6:30, which I think is actually doing pretty good for most people with small kids.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what about self-care? I heard you say that you take some time alone, which is awesome. A lot of moms don't do that. So how are you caring for yourself?
I don't do the time alone a lot. But when we do get that, most women probably won't find this relaxing. I like going grocery shopping. That's one of my favorite things to do. Mostly because I really love to cook. And so it's fun for me to get to go and pick out the food that I'm going to cook with. So most of the times my daughter will go with me to grocery shop, and that's kind of our thing to do together. But every once in a while she wants to stay home with dad, and I get to go do that by myself, and that's a real treat. Also, there's occasionally few days sprinkled in, throughout the year that my husband will just take the kids and go do something with them for the afternoon. And he lets me do whatever I want. And typically I choose to stay at home and play my guitar or read or write in a journal that I haven't written in for the past year or something like that. But that's typically what I do to kind of let my inner Sarah out.
So if you had 3 or 4 hours right now after the interview, no kids, what would you do?
I would go get coffee immediately, like a really good coffee. And then I probably would go either to my office or to my home, whichever one doesn't have people, and get my guitar out, and probably play my guitar for a little while. That's my thing I love to do, but I just never really get to do. I get to play it a lot to prepare music for like church and stuff like that, but I very rarely get the chance to just sit down and play music that I want or music that I'm writing.
Do you ever play it around your kids?
Yes, but they're so mean about it sometimes. And they just, and they're kids, so you get a guitar out and all they want to do is they want to play the guitar.
Yeah. And
so I typically have to keep a few extra like little percussion instruments or a harmonica around for them to get to play while I'm playing.
Yeah.
So that's a struggle. And a lot of times my daughter only wants me to play songs that she knows and that she likes. So I have learned quite a bit of the Frozen soundtrack on guitar, and other little songs. So I try to as much as possible because I have to rehearse music a lot of time. And so I try to as much, but I very rarely get through an entire song without one of them trying to play my guitar or hit each other with a tambourine or something. Something that stops the music altogether. Yeah. But they enjoy it. They both love music. And so I do it as much as I can, but it's just not always successful as a personal thing.
If you had to tell us what the one thing is that you excel at in mothering, I want to know what that is. And then I also would like to hear what the one thing is that you would say that is the hardest for you if you had to pick something.
I'll start with the hardest thing because I like to end on a high note. Okay. I don't want to like just stop on a note where like this is what I suck at. My husband and I talk about this a lot, that before we became parents, we had no idea how selfish and short-tempered we were. Mm-hmm. And that has been hard for me since becoming a mom, is like how short-fused I can get. And I want to blame it on the kids a lot of time. Like, oh, they were just having like a day, like where they were just, driving me crazy. And it's like, they're pretty much the same every day. If I'm honest, they bring the same level of enthusiasm and to life almost every single day. It's usually me that has either not gone to bed early enough or hasn't had enough coffee yet, or, I'm trying to get work done during time of day when I shouldn't be trying to work because it's only going to frustrate me. And so that is, I suck at just getting myself to a point where I can just be present with my kids, to where I'm choosing to not let little things get at me. Because if I try to open up my computer when they're both awake and just sitting there, then I know I'm going to get interrupted. And so then I'm the one choosing to put myself in a situation where I'm not going to be successful. And I'm just horrible at just not setting that boundary of like, just don't do that. But I check my email on my phone, I get an email and I don't need to respond to it right now, but I am type A and I'm a perfectionist. And so I want to respond to it right away. And I'm learning to stop to do that, and to set my kids up for success and to set me up for success in terms of our day and how it goes together. Because there's nothing that makes me feel worse than when I let it go too far and I just yell at one of my kids. Because then you just, God, don't you just feel horrible? It's like, and I don't even know where that angry voice comes from. But they can draw it out of me quicker than I would like. So that's an area that I constantly have to work on and remind myself that it's not, some days it's them, some days they're worse than others, but most of the day they are kids and they're the same. And it's me not adjusting to what should be a realistic view of my day.
Mothering brings so much to our lives. It brings incredible joy, but it also brings a lot of difficulty and sometimes pain. Doing soul work means taking a look at the personal difficulties you're having and asking yourself, how is this situation here for me so that I can grow? Hearing what other moms go through can be validating and it can open your eyes to new perspectives, but I also hope it sparks a desire in you to hear the call from deep inside, showing you what is asking to be worked through right now. You don't have to get overwhelmed with a laundry list of things. Just see what rises to the top right now, asking you to take a deeper look. From there, you can also talk to your innate intelligence and ask, what is the next step necessary? It may be getting a book, it may be having a conversation with someone, it may be sending an email to a specialist to ask about working with you. You have the next step right inside of you, waiting to be heard. And I'm here to encourage you to listen to it, because it's only by listening to this voice and acting on its intelligence that you will grow into your full potential. We jump back into the interview as Sarah tells us where she feels she excels in mothering.
Yes. So I don't want to say that I am a strict mom. But like I said, I'm kind of type A. So I do have a very kind of structured setup for our family. But I think it has really worked to an advantage. My kids going to bed at 7:00. They don't fight to go to bed at 7:00. They are happy to go to bed at 7:00. And that's kind of this kind of a rigid structure that I set in place as they were, as we were having kids and they were setting bedtimes and stuff. But it has provided a lot of stress-free time for me and my husband to be together and to get things done so that we're not staying up until midnight or 1 a.m. doing something that we couldn't do because the kids were awake. And so that's our entire life is very structured and routine. It has these certain times that we do things. And I don't know if other people that probably drive other people crazy, but it has worked really well for our family and given us a lot of stability and predictability that has benefited my kids. And I've been very diligent that since I stayed home with them, that I made sure that they were in the care of others on a regular basis. So it did not become this clingy attachment issue thing for us later on. So it's like I'm with them most of the time. I'm probably who they're with more than anyone else, but they do have set times during the week where they're at preschool and they're with someone else. And now when we're at church, they are in the nursery or doing children's activities. They are with someone else. Because I need my adult time, and that's one way for me to be able to do it. But they also need kid time, and they need to be around people their age. And so that they're not constantly clinging to an adult presence. Specifically mine. So in that way, I think like my type A personality, my analness has benefited my family and how we function.
Great. This is one of my favorite questions to ask moms. So besides family, what is the one thing that you could not live without?
Sometimes I can be a somewhat morbid person. And I was having a thought the other day about would I rather be blind or deaf? Which would be the lesser of those two tragedies? And I think I'd have to choose blindness. I mean, that would suck to not be able to see things, to see my kids' faces, to see my husband's face. But if I couldn't hear, I couldn't sing, or I should not sing if I could not hear, because it probably wouldn't sound as good as it does when I can hear. It's I just could not live without music. That is the vehicle that expresses me the best. It's, I'm the type of person that every time I hear a song, I'm finding the way that it expresses something in my life emotionally, and I love writing music. I love writing lyrics. I love writing in general, but it's I could not live without music in my life.
Great answer. How would you say that being a mother has changed you?
Well, I think it's changed me in a lot of ways. Before my husband and I were married, I remember him, and not necessarily in a bad way, but referring to me as being sandpaperish, just having kind of a rough personality. It's an acquired taste, I would say, and having kids has softened me a lot. I used to be a person that I don't cry. Do not cry. And, it's probably true of a lot of women, like once you have kids, and it's a hormone issue a lot of times, but like everything makes me cry now.
Yeah.
But I think being a mother just opened up that emotional, vulnerable side of me that I just usually would never allow. Like, I'm all growing up, like if someone hurt my feelings, my dad being the therapist he is, he would always like, if he said something that hurt my feelings, he would go, Sarah, I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. And I would always say, you didn't hurt my feelings. You made me angry because you're not allowed to hurt my feelings. That means you cut too deep, and I have boundaries for that. I have walls for that. Right. Which I didn't know. You hurt my feelings. I just wouldn't let myself go to that place. And so being a mom has definitely allowed me to be more vulnerable and be okay with being hurt and feeling your feelings. I think you get to the point where you're a mom and you're so exhausted, you can't do anything but feel your feelings. Cause there's that, I guess, energy that usually could maybe keep that in or keep it in check is not there. And so a lot of times it just gushes out. And so I'm a much softer person. I'm a much more understanding and gentler person than I ever was before I had kids.
Yeah. We've got 2 questions left. What is the one thing that you want your children to remember about childhood?
I always have this vision of like when my kids get older that like I want them to want to still spend time with us, that like family time is still like is fun, and that being around your family is enjoyable, that you really enjoy these people. They're not just the people that you're kind of stuck with because they're your parents and they pay for stuff for you. And so you have to kind of keep on good terms with them so they continue to support you. Like I just really want them to feel like as they're growing up that like being together as a family is the preferable thing. Now I know they're going to want to be with their friends a lot of the times, and that's great. I want that for them too. But that family time is not the like, oh, we have to hang out all together. Like I want it to be something they want to do. And so I hope that throughout the years, especially as they get older, we're going to be able to build in kind of like traditions in our family that are going to be that for them, and fun rituals that are unique to us, and that they'll look back on that and then want to do those same type of things with their kids and their families as they get older.
That's great. And we'll end with this. What is the one thing that you would want all mothers to know?
So being a mother is something you are for the rest of your life. But being a mom to your kids at the age they are right now, wherever that is for you, like that is only for that time. That's a phase. The infant part, that's a phase. The toddler part, that's a phase. And to not wish any of that to go quicker than it needs to not take that for granted, that the sweet, precious things they say now most likely turn into hurtful comments later as they're teenagers, and other things as well. That you know, all of its different phases that you go through, and some of them are going to be rougher than others. But that's what they are. They're phases, and to cherish them for what they are when they're going on, and to not try to move past them too quickly.
Many thanks to our guest, Sarah McGinnis, for speaking with us today. This week's Soul Work action step is this. Think about your answer to this question. What do you do for a living? How do you answer that question? What energy do you answer that question with? What apologies do you give in between the lines? Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, a full-time working mom, or something in between, how you answer this question and what it brings up for you when you answer can tell you a lot about where your soul may be asking you to grow. If you'd like to dive deeper into this, grab this week's Soul Worksheet and today's show notes at soulworkformoms.com. Also, make sure you're following Soul Work for Moms on Instagram and Facebook. If you're in the United States, Mother's Day is just around the corner, and I wanted to let you know that I'm co-hosting a Mother's Day Circle with Rachel of the Gratitude Collective. It's a chance to gather in circle with other women and honor the women in your life who have mothered you. It's also a chance to honor the mother in yourself. You can find details on the website or on the Soul Work for Moms Facebook page. If you aren't local, I encourage you to think about how you could gather with other women to honor the mothers in your life. I'll end today by reminding you that you matter. Your role as a mother has more impact on the world than you could ever imagine. And when you answer your soul's calling to grow and heal, you create positive change in yourself and the world. That is evolution through mothering. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.